Hi, I'm Andy Miocz and you're watching A News. Here are the headlines. Head of Russia's nuclear protection forces killed by a bomb in Moscow. Rescue workers race against time to reach survivors of cyclone in Mayotte. Donald Trump says Türkiye is to play a decisive role in determining Syria's future. Russian General Igor Kirillov has been killed in a bomb attack in Moscow. Sources in Kiev have told multiple outlets that Ukrainian security services are behind the attack.
On Tuesday morning, a bomb explosion outside an apartment building in Moscow killed Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, the head of Russia's nuclear, biological, and chemical protection troops. The Russian Investigative Committee has confirmed that an explosion device was planted near the entrance of the residential building on Ryazansky Prospect, where Kirillov and his assistant were killed. According to a committee representative, the incident is being treated as a murder, a terrorist act, and involves the legal circulation of weapons and ammunition. Kirillov's death follows recent accusations against him from Ukraine, which charged him in absentia for alleged chemical weapon use. Local residents heard the blast. Some shared their reactions to the incident that unfolded outside their building.
At first, we thought that cement might have been unloaded or something similar, but the blast was so loud that it didn't seem like construction works. It was very scary.
I only knew him from the media. I had no idea he lived in our block. I saw him on TV only. We knew his car though, because we saw it. They use the electric scooter, and there is a scooter parking there near the entrance. So who knew? At the moment you see a lot of police, but usually everything is open. Anybody can go in and out, drive in and out.
Authorities have not confirmed the exact circumstances behind Kirillov's death, though the Russian Investigative Committee is pursuing all leads.
Over in Syria, residents of the capital are rushing to bakeries as limits on bread purchases have been eased, bringing some relief to families facing food shortages.
Bakeries in Damascus reopened after the country's opposition-led transitional government eased daily purchase limits on flatbread, a staple food for Syrians. Under the previous system, residents were allowed to buy only 2 packs of bread per day using smart cards. Now, that limit has been raised to 4 packs, providing some relief to families. However, supply shortages persist and long lines continue outside bakeries, with some vendors still restricting purchases to 1 or 2 packs per person. Authorities are now focused on protecting Syria's small wheat reserves and seeking flour imports to address the shortages. The bread crisis comes amidst the years of conflict that have devastated Syria's economy and infrastructure. Despite this effort, large crowds at bakeries reflect the urgent need for a stable food supply amidst the country's fragile situation.
Meanwhile, residents of Damascus are facing soaring transportation costs as severe fuel shortages continue to disrupt daily life.
Transportation in Damascus has become a daily struggle. Syrians say fuel shortage, both diesel and gasoline, have driven prices to unprecedented levels, paralyzing movement across the city.
Why has it become expensive? Because we cannot secure diesel. The diesel has paralyzed our movement. If diesel was provided, the situation of passengers would be normal and very good.
The rising costs hit passengers hardest. Amina Al-Reis says her commute has quadrupled in price.
Travel has become more expensive. I came with 43,000 Syrian pounds, and now it is 150.
Taxi drivers also face challenges with limited fuel availability. Drivers say prices fluctuate unpredictably. While fuel remains scarce, passengers and drivers alike are left grappling with uncertainty and rising expenses in a city still rebuilding after years of conflict. The transportation crisis in Damascus continues, leaving many waiting for solutions to ease their daily burden.
In the United States, a student opened fire at a private Christian school in the state of Wisconsin, injuring 6 people and killing a teacher and a teenage student. The 15-year-old attacker was found dead at the scene.
In the latest shooting to shake a US campus, the suspect, a teenage student, killed a fellow student and a teacher at the Wisconsin school before being found dead at the scene. The incident, which took place at Abundant Life Christian School in the state capital of Madison, injured more than 6 people, including children.
Of the 6 injured and taken to local hospitals, 2 students remain in critical condition. Their injuries are life-threatening. A teacher and 3 other students were taken to area hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries. 2 of those victims, 2 of those survivors, have been released from the hospital. So that is an update.
The shooter, identified as Natalie Rupno, also known as Samantha, reportedly turned the gun on herself after the attack. Officials say her family is cooperating with the investigation, but the motive behind the violence remains unclear. The school, which serves around 400 students from kindergarten to 12th grade, is now reuniting families.
The reunification of students and their loved ones who survived this incident is complete. All student survivors have been reunified with their parents. We're still in the process of reunifying some of our staff, our teachers who selflessly stayed back to make sure our kids were okay.
While rare, school shootings involving female perpetrators account for just 3% of such incidents in the United States. For now, Madison mourns a devastating loss as authorities continue to investigate. The epidemic of shootings has impacted both public and private schools in urban, suburban, and rural communities. US President Joe Biden offered his condolences to the victims of a school shooting in Wisconsin and urged Congress to pass tougher gun control laws.
A 7.3 magnitude earthquake hit Vanuatu near its capital Port Vila, triggering landslides, crushing cars, and flattening multiple buildings. At least 1 person has been confirmed dead. There are unconfirmed reports of more deaths, but the full extent of the damage remains unclear, as power and mobile networks across the country remain cut off. Among the buildings flattened by the quake is the complex, housing a number of Western embassies. Over in Mayotte, rescuers are racing against time as hundreds are feared dead after the Chido Cyclone hit the archipelago. Large areas of the French island territory remain inaccessible.
Cyclone Chido, which was the strongest to hit the Indian Ocean islands in nearly a century, caused widespread destruction in Mayotte. Emergency workers are currently scrambling to find survivors and clear blocked roads. Despite their efforts, large areas remain inaccessible, complicating relief work. The disaster has left the island in a state of shock. French Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau arrived to the island to assess the situation, acknowledging that it would take days to determine the true scale of the disaster. The French Interior Ministry stated that the death toll is difficult to estimate at this stage, but several hundred, possibly even thousands, are feared dead.
Without a doubt, we have to start thinking about reconstruction very quickly. We are of course still in an emergency, but we must very quickly plan for reconstruction.
As the region battles the aftermath, humanitarian aid has begun to arrive. The Red Cross dispatched an initial shipment of 30 tons of emergency supplies, including tools, showels, blankets, solar lamps and hygiene kits. However, the logistics of delivering aid are complex due to the damaged infrastructure.
Fortunately, we have 250 Red Cross workers on the ground, 150 staff and 100 volunteers. These people have also been shocked by what happened. Some have lost everything, including our local director, the territorial director of the Red Cross, who lost his house. So these people need to be able to get back on their feet on a family level so that they can go back and help people and resume activities that will help people.
Local authorities reported widespread destruction, with makeshift houses destroyed and boats overturned. Key infrastructure, including government buildings and a hospital, also sustained significant damage. The cyclone's powerful winds and torrential rains uprooted coconut trees and caused severe flooding. Cyclone Chido has further strained the already fragile living conditions in the island, making recovery efforts all the more urgent.
In Estonia's Tallinn, leaders of the Joint Expeditionary Force, comprised of 10 NATO members, met to discuss ongoing support for Ukraine and increase of defense spending.
Estonian Prime Minister Kristen Michal at a meeting in Tallinn, Estonia, stressed the need to support Ukraine's military.
Yesterday we agreed to double down on Russia's shadow fleet, which is like a money train running, bringing them fresh cash to wage war in Ukraine and do harm to other democratic countries. Today's topics obviously will be Ukraine, how to assist more, how to put the Ukraine in a position of strength, to make Russia behind the table asking for the negotiations. And also the topic about how to increase our defense capabilities, what can we do, what is the interoperability between the countries. So
the Estonian government revealed that, in addition to the Joint Expeditionary Force members, Germany and Poland had also signed onto these measures. Finnish President Alexander Stubb underscored the importance of continued military support for Ukraine.
Good morning, everyone. There's a lot of talk about peace negotiations and ceasefires, and I welcome those discussions. But let's focus on the essential. Ukraine needs to win this war first. Before we can start talking about peace or ceasefire, we need to continue to support Ukraine. And the support needs to be very practical. It basically means arms and ammunition so that Ukraine can win this war on the battlefield.
Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda called for NATO to raise its defense spending target to 3% of GDP, pointing to changing geopolitical dynamics.
We have to push and to encourage our partners to do the same, to increase the floor for defense spending from 2%. We agreed on that in Vilnius summit, but taking into account the new situation, geopolitical realities, we have to increase the spending at least up to 3% of GDP. Of course, it would make also positive impact to United States administration, and for us transatlantic bond and strengthening of transatlantic bond is very important priority.
The jet led by the United Kingdom includes Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway and Sweden.
And as the war in Ukraine rages on, the United Nations Security Council convened yet again to discuss the escalating humanitarian crisis in the country, while civilians continue to suffer from intensified Russian attacks.
Briefing the Security Council, UN top humanitarian official Lisa Dalton warned that civilians in Ukraine are bearing the brunt of escalating Russian attacks, with casualties rising sharply.
Dozens of civilians have been killed in recent attacks in the regions of Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kherson, joining the thousands whose lives have already been claimed by this brutal war. Last month, long-range weapons killed 65 civilians and injured 372 across 11 regions of Ukraine, double the number of October.
Dalton reported that, according to UNDP, more than 60% of energy facilities are damaged, leaving millions without utilities as winter approaches. The conflict also hampers humanitarian access, with 1.5 million civilians in territories under Russian control cut off from aid.
We're extremely concerned about the plight of an estimated 1.5 million civilians in need of support in the parts of the regions of Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, Zaporizhia under Russian Federation occupation. We remain unable to reach these people at any adequate scale.
In response, Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations criticized Ukraine for rejecting a ceasefire and prisoner exchange while accusing its leadership of prolonging the crisis.
The Ukrainian leadership past its expiration date doesn't want to resolve the situation. They repudiated Hungary's proposal to introduce a Christmas ceasefire and an exchange of prisoners. The Zelensky regime once again categorically rejected to take over the 600 servicemen who have been in Russia for more than a year.
Ukraine's permanent representative fired back, highlighting recent strikes in Zaporizhia, where a guided aerial bomb killed 11 people, including 2 children. He also condemned Russia's relentless attacks on energy facilities.
Last Friday's strike was the 12th carried out by Russia against our energy infrastructure in 2024 alone. For these strikes, Russia used about 1,100 missiles, both cruise and ballistic ones. I reiterate, this is the number of missiles launched against energy facilities only.
As the Security Council deliberates, the war in Ukraine shows no signs of abating. With winter approaching, the humanitarian crisis deepens, leaving millions at risk as calls for ceasefires and peace remain unanswered.
US President-elect Donald Trump said he was going to talk to both Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky on a way to stop the war in Ukraine. Speaking at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, Trump called for an immediate end to the violence, saying that much of the disputed land is in ruins and would take a century to rebuild.
Everyone's being killed. It's the worst carnage that this world has seen since World War II. I've had pictures of fields where bodies are lying on top of bodies. Looks like the old pictures of the Civil War, where just bodies are all over. Just if you saw those pictures, you'd feel more strongly about it. It's got to stop, and we're trying to get it to stop. Well, we're gonna see. We're going to be talking. We'll be talking to President Putin, and we'll be talking to the representatives, Zelensky and representatives from Ukraine. We got to stop it. It's.
At his press conference, Trump also spoke on Syria. He said that Ankara will play the decisive role in determining Syria's future following the toppling of Bashar al-Assad. NATO member Türkiye supported the rebels whose victory and taking of Damascus brought an end to Syria's 13-year-long civil war. Over the weekend, Türkiye reopened its embassy in the Syrian capital, 2 days after its intelligence chief visited Damascus.
I think we have to get on with our lives. We'll have to see what happens. But right now, Syria has a lot of, there's a lot of indefinites. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Syria. But I think Turkey is going to hold the key to Syria, actually. I don't think you've heard that from anybody else, but I've been pretty good at predicting.
The European Commission will draft a plan to end visa-free arrangements for Georgian holders of diplomatic and service passports. This comes after an attempt to impose EU's sanctions on Georgian officials was blocked by Hungary and Slovakia.
The European Union moves towards suspending visa-free travel for Georgian diplomats. This was announced by Kaja Kallas, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, during a press conference after the meeting of the foreign ministers of the member states. Kallas added that EU needs to finalize the necessary processes within a week, after which further steps will be taken.
Going forward, we will continue to stand with the Georgian people and including by redirecting funding from the authorities towards the civil society and Georgian people, independent media. Because the future of Georgia, as it is in Syria for Syrians, is for people of Georgia to decide what the future can be.
Additionally, the EU could not reach an agreement on imposing personal sanctions against governments responsible for repression and human rights violations. Kallas also mentioned that Hungary and Slovakia defended positions that were not aligned with personal sanctions. Also, Luxembourg and several other countries are opposing measures against the Georgian Dream Party.
For details on the Hungary and Slovakia veto on EU sanctions for Georgian officials, we go to our Pablo Gutierrez in Budapest.
Hungary and Slovakia have blocked a proposal to impose EU sanctions on Georgian officials linked to a controversial foreign agent law. Both countries argue the sanctions are counterproductive. The EU wanted to impose the restrictions in response to Georgia's foreign agent law and the continued crackdown on protesters. Mass anti-government and pro-EU demonstrations have been taking place in Georgia. Critics say the law is undemocratic and mirrors Russian policies threatening democracy. The EU proposal sought to freeze assets and restrict visas to politicians from the country's ruling Georgian Dream Party. Brussels hoped the measures would pressure Georgia's government to drop the law, but Hungary and Slovakia say sanctions would only deepen divisions and harm dialogue. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has long criticized EU sanctions on countries outside the bloc. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico shares that same view. Both leaders maintain close ties with Georgia and oppose policies they say as punitive. Officials in Tbilisi insist the law is about transparency, not suppression. The EU is divided on this issue. Hungary and Slovakia are arguing for dialogue while other countries want tougher action. For now, sanctions are blocked, but pressure on Georgia and the EU remains. Pablo Gutierrez for A News in Budapest, Hungary.
Over in Canada, the finance minister, Freeland, unexpectedly resigned, citing policy disagreements with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In the resignation, Freeland said Trudeau's wish to increase spending could endanger Canada's ability to withstand the damage done by the tariffs that US President-elect Donald Trump is threatening to impose. She also headed a special cabinet committee on Canada-US relations. Trudeau appointed Dominic LeBlanc to both roles.
She's contributed to the public policy life of our country in an exemplary way. And I look forward now to assuming the responsibility of being Minister of Finance, talking to my colleagues as we prepare for what will be a 2025 budget. And I have a lot of confidence in the decisions our government, our cabinet has made, but will obviously do my job as Minister of Finance over the coming months.
New Delhi has once again been engulfed by dangerous levels of pollution, prompting officials to impose stricter measures to protect public health. With the air quality index soaring above 400, the city is facing a severe environmental crisis.
The air quality in New Delhi has worsened significantly, reaching hazardous levels with the air quality index exceeding 400, which is categorized as severe. In response, the government has enforced measures like hybrid classes and work from home for 50% of employees. Authorities have also banned construction work and urged vulnerable groups to stay indoors as temperatures drop and pollution lingers in the city.
Pollution has become an incurable disease, especially for Delhi. This is an annual problem. It's not like it only happened this year. The problem was there last year and the year before that too, and it will continue. There's no solution to it.
Pollution has increased a lot. It's difficult to survive during the winter season. This is the same situation in Delhi every year. We hope that everyone switches to cycling.
Pollution levels have been aggravated by seasonal smoke from nearby farms and construction dust. As winter sets in, New Delhi faces its annual pollution crisis with health risks for vulnerable residents.
In sweets and culture news, the 13th annual Baklava Festival here in Baku brought together culinary experts, dessert lovers and officials from Azerbaijan and Türkiye. The festival highlights the importance of preserving and celebrating shared cultural heritage.
The 13th annual Baklava Festival in Baku showcased the enduring friendship between Türkiye and Azerbaijan with the spotlight on the world-renowned Turkish baklava. Annual Baklava Festival in Baku, organized by the Baklava and Dessert Producers Association, brought together dignitaries, culinary experts and dessert lovers from both nations. Representatives from the Turkish embassy in Baku and members of Baghdad joined Azerbaijani citizens in celebrating this cultural event. Türkiye was represented by a delegation of 100 participants, including leading baklava producers, who showcased 60 unique Turkish desserts. Highlights included pistachio, walnut, mussel, and cold baklava varieties that captivated attendees. Azerbaijan introduced 10 distinctive dessert varieties, including its iconic Baku, Gabala, and Sheki baklava, offering a glimpse into the nation's rich culinary traditions. The Baklava Festival underscored the importance of preserving and celebrating the shared cultural heritage of Türkiye and Azerbaijan. By introducing their desserts to an international audience, the event reinforced the strong ties between the two nations.
Over in New York, the famous Gingerbread lane is on display after being a year in the making. Chef-turned-artist John Lovich says the lane will be on display until January 5th.
A sweet masterpiece is bringing holiday cheer to New York City's Columbus Circle. Known as Gingerbread Lane, created by John Lovich, it features hundreds of detailed candy houses. This marks 30 years of his festive tradition.
Behind me is 720 houses. The existing Guinness World Record, which we hold, is 1,251. Since this is over our original world record of 157 and nobody's ever broke it, we're still allowed to call ourselves the largest in the world.
Nearly a year designing the sugar spectacle in the basement of his New York City home, using thousands of pounds of candy, egg whites, and flour. While ingredient prices have soared, Lovich says smart shopping and patience help him manage the costs.
The prices went up, no doubt. There's nothing that's ever cheaper, but the trick remains, you got to wait these merchants out until they're willing to give it to you cheaper. So if you wait till certain holidays, you notice some of the prices of things comes down, particularly Easter, Christmas, things of that nature. They start selling more sugar and more flour because more people are baking, and they actually lower their prices. And then obviously the trick is to buy the candy the day after the holiday.
Inspired by the streets of New York, the village features iconic touches, a bagel shop, a subway station, and even Santa cruising in a yellow taxi. But for Lovich, the real reward is seeing smiles on visitors' faces.
Put them back on.
And regardless of what's going on with COVID, or Trump and Biden, or the economy, or the weather, or your mortgage, or whatever it is, this has a lovely escapist quality. 5, 10, 15 minutes, you tend to forget about your problems, and it definitely, young, old, anything in between, people really love it, and you see the reaction on their faces, just today, just being here, seeing people walk up to it, it just makes you feel good.
The Gingerbread Village will remain on display until January 5th, and when it's over, Lovich will start again, creating another magical masterpiece for next year's holiday season.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching A News.